Welcome back to the TDT podcast. I'm Alex Verchis. This is a video episode, so if you're listening on a non-video platform, please switch to a video platform because this is a really awesome video. It is a demonstration of me doing Flash with WeMind, which of course is for EMDR. It's a 4-minute video, so obviously it works pretty darn well. So the practical implications are obvious, but there perhaps are more practical implications than you might think. I'll discuss those afterwards. There are also some theoretical implications, I think, that deserve further research. And without further ado, check it out. All right, so we've got the memory that you've chosen for Flash here, and the worst image of the burglary. And so I'd like for you just to select that, put it to the side for now, and we're gonna play the video game here. So you know the drill. When I say Flash, you just blink 3 times. Flash. 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 Great. Okay. So what I'd like for you to do is just bring up the memory that we chose and tell me if you notice anything different about it.
No, it just feels so blah, like really soft. You know, that image is just really soft. Like there's no edges, no like sharp images. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, if it was a 10 out of 10 to start with, what is it now?
Like a 4.
Okay.
I'll say 4, yeah.
Well, let's just put it to the side and play more video games here.
Okay.
Great. Flash. 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 Great. Okay, so I'd just like for you to pause for a second and revisit this memory that you chose. Bring it up and tell me if you notice anything further different.
I feel like it's still at 4.
Interesting. We'll just put it to the side for a second.
Okay.
And we'll play this more. Flash. 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 Great. Okay. So I'd like for you to shift gears and bring up the memory that we selected and tell me if you notice anything different now.
It seems a little bit more distant. Like
Okay.
it's in a distance, you know, like it's not as close. When I'm picturing, you know, walking into my house and opening the, well, I didn't really open the door because it was actually open, but just walking in, it just seems like I'm really far away.
So what would it be out of 10 now?
Maybe about 2.
Okay. Well, just stick it to the side and we'll do this again.
Okay.
Flash. 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 Great. Okay, well, you know the drill. Just pause for a minute. Bring up the memory that we selected and tell me how disturbing it seems now to you on a scale of 0 to 10.
I mean, I'm getting like no response. There's no like heart beating and no any kind of movement inside. That's gone.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thanks for
Mm-hmm.
helping out. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Pretty cool, right? So I'd like to discuss some of the practical implications, but first of all, about the colleague who volunteered to do this with me. There are about zero reasons for some demand characteristics with this, although this is obviously not a controlled experiment by any stretch of the imagination. She is extremely skeptical of the use of AI. She is not a trained EMDR clinician. She is a trained Flash clinician and knows when Flash is working and when it isn't, but she has no connection to me as a consultee or, of course, an EMDR Institute colleague or this podcast. So that's the best I could do for a demonstration. I wanted to clear that up. So as far as clinician implications, a lot of Flash clinicians are not so hot at doing the preferred method of the positive engaging focus, which is the distraction, a goofy conversation. Um, you kind of have to channel Dr. Manfield and be able to have the experience to interrupt at the rudest possible moment. So that takes that element out of the equation. Also, at the end of a hard day, you get kind of tired of having goofy conversations. Furthermore, if you're dealing with complex trauma, it's difficult to switch back and forth between goofy conversation and thinking about parts of self or any other sorts of uh, theory that your mind needs to be occupied with to do your best work. So no interruptions there. So for the experienced clinician, it still has a high value. Um, it's worth noting that this could have been automated, but I've used this with complex trauma clients, and you need your full brain present, and automation would not be a good thing in those cases. Nonetheless, client implications. Um, with the very seriously hardcore European style EMDR, um, which will be highlighted in an upcoming episode where I interview Ad de Jong and Susie Matthijssen. Um, Odd is apparently very interested in this application, although he hasn't seen this particular video. He's seen another. Um, so even for their kind of really tough exposure-oriented version of EMDR that gets great results, the research is there, the client still has to be able to do phase 3. So your European client who's got 4 sessions or so has waited 6 months. They're really up for anything that's going to cause change for the most part. But your average American client is expecting a low impact talk therapy, and EMDR itself can be a tough sell, even though it's pretty low impact as far as trauma therapy goes, which is why it's the World Health Organization's preferred trauma therapy for PTSD in adults. But still, I found that Flash creates instant buy-in to EMDR as well as making EMDR work really fast. So Flash is, according to Dr. Manfield's thinking, a subliminal exposure. So more on that in a second. But uh, for instance, with a veteran or first responder, I find that Flash is really useful for this population. The reason why is they may think, this is kind of odd stuff, this EMDR. Well, you can do Flash blind, and all of a sudden, you seem like a wizard and you have complete buy-in. That's my experience. This is a real advantage because even with, as I said, a really advanced version of EMDR that works very quickly. If the client is fearful of getting one foot in the memory and doing phase 3 of EMDR, the activation phase, you can't do anything with exposure because the memory is not activated. Um, they're going to either be blocked by panic or shutdown, unless you're in an inpatient setting, and that's a different thing altogether. So, in terms of client implications, this also deals with highly anxious clients' tendency to self-sabotage Flash, and if the SUD doesn't go down, to self-sabotage it even more, although that's perfectly fine. Um, so that's another great thing for clients with using WeMind. because the working memory taxation is optimized. So working memory taxation and flash are not terms that usually go together. So some clinical implications where I am completely working off of just theoretical guesses here. And I discussed this a little bit with Odd and Susie in the upcoming episode, and they're kind of like skeptical, but open to it a little bit. And it's like, we'll see. So I think this sheds light on perhaps how Flash and EMDR 2.0, especially Odd's brief therapy EMDR, may share the same OS or operating system as Dr. Manfield claimed in an early episode. So how I came up with trying Flash with WeMind, several different things occurred. First of all, Dr. Manfield said in his interview, I really think that Odd in EMDR 2.0 is actually doing Flash. I just think that he's using his own distraction techniques with his working memory tasks. And the way that Dr. Manfield argued that, which is, I don't think that guy standing up dancing with Odd is really thinking about the disturbing memory. And Odd says, no, no, he is. And you'll see him say that in his interview. And I think Dr. Manfield may have a point. So let's see what's going on. So if that's true, I thought, well, what if you used Odd's working memory tasks instead of the goofy conversation for the positive engaging focus, because that might provide some evidence for what Dr. Manfield's saying. So I can juggle, and I have these silly little stuffed penguins that I keep back there for that purpose. And I started juggling penguins instead of having a goofy conversation, and Flash worked, and it worked faster. So I thought, okay, there we go. I interviewed Sonder and realized, okay, WeMind can do the penguin juggling for me, so to speak. And as you can see, it works pretty darn well. Optimizing the working memory taxation, having Flash work better, and I just am using 20 seconds of WeMind because that's as fast as I can say Flash 5 times. Experimenting more, it may be that we only need to say Flash once. But one thing I noticed in experimentation is you actually don't need to say Flash at all for the SUD to go down. And that makes sense because Odd in his EMDR 2.0 is not saying Flash. So it just works slower. So how do I think that saying Flash is actually helping? Okay, so here's kind of further implications for what Dr. Manfield was arguing. I think maybe one conclusion you can draw is that when you say Flash, you are adding a complicated working memory taxation task, and that is going to temporarily overload the working memory and imperceptibly allow the traumatic memory to slip through, as Dr. Manfield says, obtaining that orienting reflex that says it's not really happening. Could have had a V8 moment, as he said. The burglary isn't really still happening, which, by the way, this colleague's memory was very disturbing, walking in on her house being burglarized, and it still affected her to this point when she would, you know, um, do certain tasks that were related to this. So we'll check in and see how long that effect lasts if it's not being disturbing anymore. But nonetheless, saying Flash seems to speed up the process, and that may be why. Now, one thing that sort of shows that this wasn't fake to a degree is that in one case, you can see that the Flash technique did not cause the SUD to go down. It got stuck at 4 once, and I just went with that. Why do I think that happened? Well, if you look back at it, the slider for working memory taxation actually went up about 10 points after my colleague's first flash, where that SUD wound up at 4. So it was like at something like 34% maximum working memory taxation. And you can look at the video again to see this. It's about halfway through. And it went up to over 40. So what does that mean? When I was saying flash the first few times, her working memory was not optimally taxed. So there you go. I think that's why the SUD didn't go down. And that's connected to some things, and Sandra talks about this as research that's going on, where, and I've seen this in using WeMind with standard protocol EMDR, with something extremely disturbing to a client, that when the SUD is 0, the working memory like spikes up to like 80%. Some clinicians, Sandra said, have seen it go 90, 100%. That's really interesting. So it appears that when the SUD goes down, the working memory taxation has to be greater in order to obtain the result, which it makes sense when you think about it. But in some ways, I kind of expected it to be the opposite, by the kind of jinx effect or something like that. But, you know, that's the results everybody's getting with WeMind. So, in conclusion, I hope that this is strongly considered. I'm going to be getting in touch with Dr. Manfield and others, and a colleague and I, new co-host. Thank goodness I never wanted this program to be about me in the first place, and which is why there's a discussion board. Which please get on there and post stuff, because I'm going to tell you, just to interrupt myself for a second before I go on about further data I might gather. Um, no one is posting on the discussion board. I'm not quite sure why, because a lot of people were watching these videos. Odd was confused about that. He said, "Is there anything where I can like join the discussion with people watching this program?" That just shows like why Odd is one of my absolute heroes, um, because he wants dialogue. He wants research, but he wants participation by clinicians. And you've got the opportunity to go on that discussion board and talk with Ad de Jong about this stuff. And why would you not want to do that? So get on that discussion board, guys. Email dissociativetable@gmail.com. You show you're a clinician and you can have anonymous access to that discussion board, or you can stick your name on there, whatever. In any case, to get back to what I was speaking about, a colleague and I are going to try this a bit more, mess around with it, and hopefully have enough information to add to what will hopefully be a presentation of WeMind at the next EMDRIA conference and perhaps the next Flash conference. So thank you for checking this out. Please look for the next episodes. My new co-host colleague Danielle is going to be hosting an interview with Kathy Steele that's already been recorded and is in pre-production. And I this past week interviewed Adi Young and Susie Matthijssen. Now that was a lively conversation, especially when we got into this because it just sort of flowed. Uh, thank you so much for your support, listening. As you can see, I am not wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I am wearing Cracked Machine merch. Please go to their Bandcamp website and support them because they are supporting the show and in other ways are supporting um, popularizing global access to trauma treatment worldwide. And we thank them for donating rights to their music to the show in support of that as well. So this one's for you, Bill. And for the rest of you, we'll see you next time.